Dr. Marcus Hall arrived before sunrise, the sky still a bruise of indigo over the empty parking lot of White Oak Veterinary Hospital. He slipped through the staff entrance, ID badge already warmed against his heart, and stopped for a moment in the cool tile foyer. The scent of disinfectant mingled with the faint, comforting odor of coffee brewing in the break room, a morning ritual he seldom paused to enjoy. Instead, he headed straight for the surgery prep area, arriving 20 minutes before his first scheduled spay procedure. In the soft glow of the overhead lights, Marcus reviewed his case notes. A diabetic cat with a stubborn urinary tract infection, a litter of orphaned puppies awaiting vaccinations, and one complex orthopedic consult he had requested weeks earlier. His fingers traced the elegant script of his mentor's comments. Exceptional observations, Doctor Hall. But beneath that praise lay his daily reality. Though he had graduated top of his class at the state university and completed double the required rotations in neurosurgery, he still did not have full privileges to the animal wing. That gleaming suite of ICU kennels and robotic surgical tables was reserved for the core surgeons, all white, all tenured, all chosen by Dr. Stevens, the chief of surgery. Marcus scrubbed in for the morning's first case, his thoughts alive with the precise angles of his incision and the steely glint of his instruments. As he walked past the locked door to the animal wing, his heart clenched at the chrome keypad and tinted glass. Through the small window, he could see the mint-green walls and custom anesthesia machines, untapped tools he had trained to master. He lifted his eyes to the hospital crest, etched above the door, a proud lion flanked by oak branches. The motto beneath, "Excellence in Every Life," felt like a bitter joke. By mid-morning, news arrived that Baxter, the governor's Rottweiler and a major donor's prized companion, needed follow-up scans. Marcus's proposal for using the animal wing's advanced MRI scanner had been shelved due to lack of space, according to Dr. Stevens. When he peeked around the door, he caught the white surgical tech hauling Baxter's massive frame across the threshold. The dog's worried whines seemed to echo Marcus's own frustrated sigh. He stepped forward and called after them. "I reviewed Baxter's cranial compression. You know I can assist." The tech offered a tight nod but closed the door before Marcus could speak again. All around him, junior doctors and vet techs offered polite smiles as they passed. "Morning, Doctor Hall," then slipped past him into the wing with Dr. Stevens's blessing. Marcus watched their backs walk away, sterilized shoes clicking on the vinyl floor. He straightened his lab coat, stethoscope swinging at his neck like a lonely reminder of his training, and turned back to the recovery ward. Each newborn pup he examined crackled with life. Each purring cat he examined calmed under his gentle hand. Yet beyond that locked door, innovation and opportunity remained out of reach, held at bay by unspoken privilege. As the sun rose fully over the hospital's red brick facade, Marcus paused by the window overlooking the courtyard. A single oak tree cast a long shadow across the neatly trimmed grass. He inhaled deeply, tasting determination on the morning air. "Excellence in every life," he whispered to himself, fingers brushing the oak leaf emblem on his ID badge. Then he squared his shoulders, tucked his case notes into his pocket, and prepared to prove, once again, that merit, not membership, must define true healing. Doctor Marcus Hall pushed through the swinging door into the sterile corridor that led to White Oak's animal wing, clipboard in hand and stethoscope warm against his chest. He'd just finished stabilizing a fractious parrot in the avian ward, his deft fingers gently tying off blood vessels around a ruptured air sac, and was eager to review Baxter the Rottweiler's post-operative scans. Baxter's owner, CEO Jonathan Preston, had personally requested Marcus's input on the dog's neurosurgical follow-up, praising his detailed notes and confident bedside manner. Yet as Marcus approached the familiar chrome keypad, the overhead lights felt suddenly too bright, the low mechanical hum too loud. He raised his ID badge at the scanner. The LED blinked green, then swiftly flipped to red. A curt beep echoed off the tile walls. Marcus frowned. "Strange," he muttered, glancing down at the card. His credentials read, "Dr. Marcus L. Hall, DVM, Surgery." He tapped again, slower this time. The light turned red, Then the screen displayed, "Access denied." Footsteps approached behind him, and Dr. Evelyn Stevens, the hospital's chief of surgery, swept around the corner in her crisp white coat, clipboard clutched like a shield. Her poise was immaculate, pearls at her throat, sensible heels clicking with authority, and her eyes flicked past Marcus to the keypad, as if he were an afterthought. "Marcus," she said coolly, "I've got Baxter's file. You'll review it later. He's scheduled for the MRI under my team's care." Marcus's heart sank. "With all due respect, Evelyn, I authored his clino neurosurgical assessment. My protocols align exactly with the plan you approved last week. I need to see the images before any further interventions." He tried to keep his tone measured, professional. She tapped her pen against the doorframe. "Policy dictates that only tenured surgeons have privileges here." Her voice carried the weight of unspoken precedent. "White men first, black men last. I'm following hospital bylaws." He swallowed. Through the frosted glass, he could hear the low whine of Baxter's anxious whimpers as a white surgical tech wheeled the massive dog by. The Rottweiler's head lolled on the gurney, ears pinned back in confusion. "Wait," he began, but the door clicked shut before his words could finish. Dr. Stevens stepped aside as two junior vets, both white, strode past him with a stack of sterile drapes. They didn't acknowledge his presence. One murmured, "They're prepping for anesthesia." The other laughed softly about Marcus's big break from the bird ward. Marcus clenched his jaw. His fingers curled around the edge of the door, cold metal biting into his palm. Every muscle in his body tightened as he watched Baxter's surgery team disappear down the hall, their footsteps fading into the distance. The low mechanical hum of the MRI room mocked him, an advanced machine he had trained on, studied inside and out, capable of mapping canine neural pathways to sub-millimeter precision, yet forbidden to him by invisible lines of privilege. He backed away from the door, heart heavy. The corridor's antiseptic smell felt like iron on his tongue. He ran a hand through his hair, brushing aside the neat coils that he wore pulled tight for practicality. The overhead lights flickered momentarily, and in that moment of darkness, he felt the weight of every late-night study session, every weekend he'd sacrificed to shadow Dr. Stevens, every white patient he'd saved in emergencies, and still be relegated to the fringes of his own specialty. Determined not to lose control, Marcus exhaled slowly and squared his shoulders. He tapped a quick note into his tablet. "Review Baxter's pre- and post-op scans. Request override of privileges." Then he walked away, each step measured, each breath steady. Behind him, the locked door sealed fate for Baxter's next hours. Before him lay the path he would have to carve to break into that wing, not by begging at keypads, but by forcing the hospital to confront its own policies. And somewhere in that resolve, he felt the first flicker of a plan to rewrite the rules that had kept him out. That night, Marcus was grading surgery reports at his kitchen table when his phone buzzed insistently. He glanced at the screen. "Animal wing, emergency." His heart lurched. Moments later, the head nurse's frantic voice crackled through the line. "Dr. Hall, Baxter's gone into torsion. His abdomen is distended, heart rate dropping. Dr. Stevens is unreachable, and the on-call vet is delayed in traffic. We need you now." Throwing down his pen, Marcus grabbed his lab coat and sprinted back to the hospital. In the empty corridors, his footsteps echoed off the cold tile as he barreled toward the animal wing door. He swiped his badge, access denied. Access. The red light mocked him. His pulse hammered. Baxter's life hung by minutes. Marcus pressed his palm to the reader, willing it to register. Nothing. He remembered the emergency override code Dr. Stevens had once whispered during his rotation. Fingers trembling, he punched it in. The panel clicked open. The door hissed, and he burst inside. The fluorescent lights revealed Baxter lying on the stainless steel gurney, flanks rising and falling in shallow gasps as the head nurse knelt beside him, tears glinting on her cheeks. His gums were chalky gray. Tachycardia flashed on the monitor. Every instinct surged through Marcus's trained mind. "Get me an IV line," he ordered, voice steady despite the adrenaline throbbing in his temples. A tech handed him the catheter. He inserted it deftly into Baxter's cephalic vein. Crystalloid bolus now. Push. He monitored the rapid drip of fluids, hoping to stabilize perfusion. Meanwhile, Baxter's abdomen bulged ominously. Gastric torsion. This was a race against time. Prep the OR, Marcus instructed. I'll scrub in. In the adjacent prep room, he scrubbed with lightning speed, gowning and gloving with practiced precision. The sterile mask hid the set line of his jaw. As the team wheeled Baxter in, Marcus assessed the anesthetic depth, adjusted the vaporizer, and leaned close to confirm end-tidal CO2. We're at 6.5, he murmured. Increase isoflurane by 1.5% and keep me updated. Standing over Baxter's midsection, Marcus made a cruciate incision through the skin, then muscle, then peritoneum. A rush of malodorous gas hissed out. His gloved fingers swept aside distended stomach to locate the twisted pylorus. With two firm, decisive rotations, he untwisted the stomach. Gastric detorsion complete. Blood that had pooled in the spleen drained away, and color began to return. He paused only to pack the cavity with warm saline, suctioning out residual fluid, then inspected for necrotic tissue. Finding none, he performed a prophylactic gastropexy, suturing the stomach to the body wall to prevent recurrence. Each stitch was surgical poetry, precise, necessary, life-saving. Within minutes, the monitor's green waveform steadied, and Baxter's heart rate rose to a normal 80 beats per minute. Marcus closed the incision in layers, lavaging once more before suturing. He removed his gloves, peeling them off like a second skin, and wiped sweat from his brow. Baxter stirred, lifting his head to lick Marcus's finger. Relief washed over the room, and the head nurse exhaled, voice trembling. "You did it, doctor." Hall. As Baxter was transferred to recovery, Marcus stepped back into the hallway. The override drawer still open behind him, a silent testament to the barrier he had just broken. He discarded the code paper in the biohazard bin and straightened his coat, determination hardening in his chest. Tonight, he had defied policy to save a life. Tomorrow, he would hold the hospital accountable for the rules that nearly cost that life in the first place. The fluorescent lights buzzed as Dr. Hall's gloved fingers hovered over the keypad, the red, access denied glare mocking each passing second. Baxter's life was slipping away on the other side of that door. Marcus inhaled sharply, recalling the emergency override code Doctor. Stevens had once whispered in confidence, 47219. He punched the sequence with trembling precision. The lock clicked, the door hissed open, and he burst inside. The animal wing smelled of antiseptic and fear. Baxter lay on a stainless steel gurney, his massive frame rigid, flanks distended like a swollen balloon. His gums were paper white, and the heart rate monitor emitted a frantic series of beeps. 150 beats per minute, erratic and shallow. The head nurse's face was streaked with tears as she fumbled for Baxter's records. There was no time for paperwork. Marcus dropped to one knee beside the dog, voice calm but urgent. "We're dealing with gastric torsion. I need an IV line, cephalic vein, now." A young technician handed him a catheter. Marcus inserted it in one smooth motion, anchoring it with gauze. "Crystalloid bolus, 20 milliliters per kilogram," he directed. As warm fluid streamed into Baxter's vein, Marcus surveyed the team, the anesthetist adjusting isoflurane, the scrub tech laying out instruments, and the respirator cycling oxygen. Every hand moved under his command. Seconds later, the gurney slid into the adjoining operating room. Marcus scrubbed in at breakneck speed, his mind running through the steps. Midline incision, expose the stomach, identify twist, detorsion, gastropexy. In the OR, bright overhead lamps glared at him as he clipped on his gown and gloves. The anesthetist's voice reported, "End tidal CO2 at 20. Light anesthesia." Marcus nodded, reached for the scalpel, and began. His incision was surgical poetry, a clean slice through skin, subcutaneous tissue, and linea alba. A rush of pungent gas hissed as he penetrated the peritoneum. He gently swept aside loops of small intestine to reveal the stomach, its greater curvature twisted 90 degrees. Baxter's tachycardia threatened to spiral, but Marcus's voice remained steady. Hold pressure on the pylorus. Slow. Controlled. With 2 deliberate rotations, he untwisted the stomach, watching the distended organ deflate as blood returned. Color blossomed in the mucosa. He irrigated the cavity with warm saline, suctioning out residual fluid. Next came the gastropexy, non-absorbable sutures, anchoring the stomach to the body wall in 3 strategic points. Each stitch was placed with measured tension to prevent recurrence without compromising motility. As he closed the muscle layers with absorbable sutures, Marcus monitored the heart rate monitor, a steady, reassuring 80 beats per minute. He layered the subcutaneous tissue and skin, then applied a final flush of antiseptic solution. Baxter's head lifted, tongue flicking as he licked Marcus's gloved fingertip. Relief coursed through Marcus like a wave. He removed his gloves, discarded them, and straightened his blood-spattered gown. Outside, the head nurse exhaled so hard her shoulders shook. "You saved him," she whispered, voice cracking. Marcus offered a tired smile. He glanced back at the open override panel, a silent accusation against the policy that had barred him mere hours before. Closing it behind him, he vowed that tomorrow he would not only heal patients, but also rewrite the rules that nearly cost one his life. The morning after Marcus's unsanctioned rescue, the animal wing corridors buzzed with hushed excitement. Nurses who had been on shift during the crisis clustered in doorways, swapping the smallest details. How they'd watched Dr. Hall's crisp white coat flash past them, how Baxter's heart rate had steadied the moment the twist was undone, how calm and precise his voice sounded even under the fluorescent glare. One tech confessed she'd never seen a surgeon move with such urgency. Another whispered she'd replayed the emergency override scene so many times she could have narrated it herself. By mid-shift, the head nurse was stopping colleagues in the hallway, nodding toward Baxter's recovery suite. "He's stable, thanks to Marcus." But not everyone celebrated. In the surgeon's lounge, Dr. Evelyn Stevens sat at the head of the table, red-rimmed and constricted by anger. She had summoned her lieutenants, 3 tenured, all white, into a confidential huddle. "This is a breach of every protocol we stand for," Stevens hissed, voice low so only they could hear. "Privilege exists for a reason." One of the senior vets, Dr. Carlisle, tried to calm her, pointing out Baxter's survival and the donor's likely gratitude. Stevens slammed her coffee mug down. "That dog was his wallet's guardian, not ours. We're not a charity. This hospital operates on rules." Their meeting ended with a draft memo to Human Resources, recommending a formal reprimand for unauthorized entry. Yet no one could deny the undercurrent of grudging respect that Marcus's skills had earned, even as they drafted his censure. Word of the midnight surgery reached far beyond the wing's frosted glass. Jonathan Preston, Baxter's owner and the hospital's largest donor, arrived just after dawn in a sleek black SUV. He strode into recovery like a storm, his expensive loafers echoing off the tile. At first, he stood silently, watching Baxter's tail thump against the kennel floor. Then he turned to Marcus, eyes glistening. "You saved my best friend," he said, voice thick. He pressed a bouquet of white roses into Marcus's hands. "For every second you didn't hesitate," and insisted on personally escorting Marcus to the hospital's media room. There, Preston recorded a heartfelt testimonial on his phone. "When my dog couldn't breathe, Dr. Marcus Hall didn't wait for permission. He acted. He's the reason Baxter is alive today." Within minutes, he posted it to his 50,000 followers on Twitter and LinkedIn. Almost overnight, Dr. Hall's deft hands and quiet determination became a lightning rod online. Pet care blogs ran the story under headlines like "Rottweiler saved by rogue surgeon," some praising Marcus as a hero, others questioning how policy could override life. Local news stations cut together footage of Baxter's wagging tail, with Preston's emotional endorsement. Animal welfare groups nominated Marcus for Veterinarian of the Year. Even the hospital's own internal newsletter published a staff spotlight, but buried it 3 pages down, wedged between a flu shot reminder and an ad for cafeteria specials. Marcus watched the cascade of notifications on his phone. tweets, retweets, thank you emails from colleagues he'd never met, and felt a mix of pride and apprehension. He knew the hospital's brass was already bristling at the attention, and that his next challenge would be turning this viral moment into lasting change. But for now, as Baxter's steady breathing echoed through the recovery door, Marcus allowed himself a quiet nod. Life, finally, had trumped protocol. 2 days after the media blitz, White Oak Veterinary's boardroom was suffused with tension. Polished mahogany chairs circled a long table strewn with printed headlines. Rogue vet, hospital breach, policy versus patient care, and Baxter's triumphant photo on the recovery ward. At the head sat Caroline Myers, the hospital's CEO, her steel gray hair pulled into a tight bun and her posture radiating control. Flanking her were the chairs of the chief financial officer, the director of human resources, and Dr. Evelyn Stevens, whose glare at Marcus Hall could have lit an operating theater. Marcus entered alongside Jonathan Preston and the head nurse, Angela Ruiz. The room fell silent. Myers tapped her gavel once against the polished surface. "Thank you all for convening on short notice," she began, voice measured. "We have an urgent matter. Dr. Hall's unauthorized entry into the animal wing to perform life-saving surgery on Baxter the Rottweiler. We will hear testimony from all parties before deciding corrective action." Preston rose first. In a steady, resonant voice, he recounted how Baxter's life had hung by seconds, how administrators had deemed policy more important than the dog's survival, and how Marcus had refused to leave his patient's side. He pressed the board for clarity. Is this hospital's foremost priority protocol or life? His question echoed in the room. Next, Angela Ruiz spoke, her nurse's badge glinting in the overhead light. She described the head nurse's frantic call, the panic in the recovery bay, and Marcus's calm, expert leadership under pressure. She emphasized the staff's moral injury, how they'd hesitated, confused by the locked doors, until Marcus forced them to act. "We failed as a team," she said. "He reminded us of our oath." Then it was Dr. Stevens's turn. She rose, smoothing her coat, and delivered a formal account of Marcus's breach of policy. Her words were precise, clinical. By bypassing the established access protocols, Dr. Hall compromised security and set a dangerous precedent. She argued that protocol existed to protect patients from unvetted personnel, not to stall care. Some board members nodded in agreement, concern furrowing their brows. Finally, Marcus stood. He cleared his throat, meeting each board member's gaze in turn. "With all due respect," he began, "protocol is meaningless if it endangers the lives it's meant to protect. Baxter's gastric torsion is fatal within an hour. My training and the emergency override code exist to save lives when other options have failed. I did not act for personal glory, but to uphold the very mission of this hospital." He laid out a concise timeline. Dr. Stevens unavailable, on-call vet delayed, Baxter's critical vitals, the override code, and the successful surgery. He concluded, "Our bylaws must be shaped by patient welfare, not hierarchy or favoritism." An uncomfortable silence followed. Myers exchanged glances with the CFO, whose tapping pen slowed. The HR director cleared her throat. "We must balance safety protocols with timely care," she said. "Dr. Hall, your actions saved a life. Yet we cannot ignore a breach of procedure." Myers nodded. "Mr. Preston, Dr. Ruiz, thank you. Dr. Stevens, your concerns are noted. Dr. Hall, your case demonstrates a clear flaw in our policy framework." She paused. "Therefore, the board resolves to amend our bylaws. Emergency override access will be formally codified for any credentialed surgeon when a life-threatening situation arises, provided post-event reporting and peer review. We will also establish a Diversity and Excellence Council, chaired by Dr. Hall, to oversee privileges and ensure bias does not influence credentialing." A ripple of relief and applause from Preston and Angela filled the room. Dr. Stevens's jaw clenched, but she said nothing. Marcus exhaled, shoulders uncoiling. Myers concluded, "We will issue a public statement this afternoon, acknowledging our previous failings and announcing these new policies. Let us move forward, united in our commitment to every life we serve. As the board adjourned, Marcus stepped aside as Preston offered a grateful handshake. In the hallway, Angela hugged him, her eyes shining. Though the path to true equity remained long, today the hospital had rewritten its rules, and his courageous act had charted the way. By the time dawn's pale light filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of White Oak Veterinary Hospital's animal wing, it already felt different. The polished steel door that had once locked Marcus Hall out now stood ajar, its keypad deactivated and replaced with a brass plaque that read, "Emergency Override Access, enabled for all credentialed surgeons." Marcus arrived early, uniform crisp and stethoscope gleaming, and paused to run his fingertip over the engraving. The scent of antiseptic was still strong, but beneath it lay something new: possibility. He slipped inside and found Baxter, fully recovered, pacing his kennel, tail wagging as he caught sight of Marcus. The Rottweiler bounded forward, nearly toppling the nurse on duty, and pinned his large muzzle against Marcus's hand in a grateful nuzzle. Marcus laughed, kneeling to scratch behind the dog's ears, and whispered, "Good morning, friend." As the day warmed, a steady stream of interns and junior doctors filtered into the wing for their first Marcus Hall Excellence Tour. At the head of a semicircle in the recovery bay, Marcus projected confidence born of hard-won victories. He introduced each visitor by name: Olivia Chang, fresh from shelter medicine; Daniel Reed, a surgical resident; Priya Patel, the new oncology fellow, and then walked them down the corridor, pausing at every station. He demonstrated how to read the override access logs, explaining the new peer review process that ensured transparency and accountability. He described the cases where delay could cost lives, and how the policy change now empowered each of them to act without hesitation. Mid-morning brought an unexpected visit. Dr. Evelyn Stevens, her posture straighter and her expression softer than Marcus had ever seen. She approached the group, cleared her throat, and offered a measured apology. "Dr. Hall," she began, "I was wrong to uphold a policy that put protocol above a patient's survival. Thank you for showing me, and this hospital, what true excellence demands." The interns exchanged stunned looks as Stevens stepped aside and allowed Marcus to continue. In that moment, the barriers of rank and color felt as though they'd dissolved. Later, in the boardroom of the newly formed Diversity and Excellence Council, Marcus sat at the head of the long table, flanked by Angela Ruiz, Jonathan Preston, and two other council members he'd nominated, Dr. Chang and a representative from the local animal welfare nonprofit. They reviewed the first quarterly report, logs of every emergency override, feedback from team members, and initial survey results, showing a 95% improvement in staff confidence during critical incidents. Marcus guided them through each finding, his voice steady. "We measure success by lives saved, and by every colleague who feels empowered to save them." That evening, as the last of the staff filtered out, Marcus paused at the wing's entrance one final time. The brass plaque gleamed in the fading light, a testament to countless hours of advocacy and unwavering skill. Baxter's harness jingled as the dog trotted up beside him, and Marcus clipped on the leash. They walked together down the corridor, doctor and patient, allies in a fight for equity. Outside, the oak tree in the courtyard cast long, welcoming shadows across the spotless pathway. Marcus looked up at its spreading branches and felt at last that the canopy of privilege had been pruned back, making room for new growth. In his pocket, his phone buzzed with congratulations, messages from colleagues, citations in veterinary journals, even a handwritten thank you note from Governor Preston. Marcus smiled and slipped the phone away. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, more surgeries, more policy reviews, but tonight was enough. He had rewritten the rules, saved a life, and opened doors that had once been closed. As he and Baxter strolled into the warm summer evening, Marcus knew that excellence would no longer be defined by who held the keys, but by who dared to turn them.